here that shows what mid-Queens has been involved in over the last 3 years. We're not a very loud bunch, but we work behind the scenes a lot, and we talk to our legislators, and we tell them what's going on in our community. So I'd like you to look this over, because it's a lot of work and a lot of time that we put in. I frankly have been living in this community 60 years, and I've been involved, as Morty said, for a good part of that 60 years. I was first involved with the housing issue and how landlords were treating their buildings, and we used to meet with Morty and many other people in the community to try to help us to make the housing conditions much better. And it did happen. It did happen. So, and I love the work that I do, and all the support that I have, the gentlemen sitting in the audience and my friends that are sitting up here, because one person cannot do it. It takes a village to do it, as somebody once said. So I want to thank all of you for coming here, and we're going to call on EOT to speak to us, okay? And let the people know what it is we want from you. That we're definitely going to get. Okay, I'm sorry. So, Al?
Yes.
Would you go and speak to us?
Sure.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Can everybody hear me? There's an echo with this. I'll just speak loudly. I'll switch it off so we don't get any. So good evening. I just want to say thank you so much for
No,
having me.
I think you should use it because I'm putting it on YouTube, so.
Okay, there might be an echo on it. But
No, it's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
you use it.
Sure.
Thank you.
So, good evening, everyone. Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Albert Silvestri. I'm the Deputy Queensborough Commissioner for the Department of Transportation. So what we like to say is, that's everything you don't pay for with a Metro card. So as soon as you walk outside your front door, onto a sidewalk, onto a street, you look at a sign, look at a signal, look at a street light, look at markings on the road, that's all within the bailiwick of the Department of Transportation. So it's a lot within our portfolio. I'm joined tonight by my colleague Andrew Arcis. Andrew is one of our borough planners, one of our fine borough planners. He represents community boards 7, 8, 11, and 14. Right? So much of Northeast Queens, and we also gave him the Rockaway Peninsula as a challenge. So as we know, there's lots of different issues just within the county of Queens, from Far Rockaway to Breezy Point, from Astoria to Douglaston to Central Queens. And here in Central Queens, this community deals with a tremendous amount. We know how difficult it is going north to south in Queens. We know about the congestion that we deal with on the highways. And our role at DOT is twofold. One is to make sure that all road users are safe. Pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, seniors, young people, you name it. It's important that everyone have a safe experience on New York City streets. And that's what Andrew and I do every single day. We want to make sure that people are safe. So I'm just going to start there, and I think we can all agree that that's a goal that we all share. Two, we have to keep our city infrastructure, our city streets, our street lights, our signage, our markings, everything in tip-top condition. And we're talking about a city, a vast city. We go by lane miles, the number of lanes that you can drive on, that you can walk on, that you can bike on in New York City. And it's a lot. I mean, what are we talking about, 6,000? I just forget.
6,000 linear, 18,000
6,000 linear miles of streets in New York City. That's a lot of streets that we have to maintain, a lot of areas where we have to fill potholes, where we have to mark, where we have to put signals, put regulations on curbs, put street lights on corridors to make people and motorists feel safe when they're driving. So it's a lot of upkeep, and the city really, I have to say, over the last 6 years has invested a lot. We've We've actually been paving more in the last 6 years than we were in the previous time frame. And that's allowed us, a simple thing like fixing a pothole. If you report to 311, basically what we're looking at now is 48 hours and that pothole is filled. And if sometimes we get the issue where people say, well, that's not the pothole I wanted you to fill, it's actually two houses down, that's something that our office can help you with. So Andrew and I were with the Queensborough Commissioner's Office. We're the main, external affairs office with our agency. We work with community boards, civic organizations, elected officials, you name it. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience, people that we've been to their meetings, that we've worked with on. I'd like to think that they had positive experiences. Please don't roll your eyes in the back. But the city does, want to focus on reducing what we call KSI, which is killed or severely injured on city streets. It's a technical term, but it's important to note it's not just people who get killed in a tragedy. We had a tragedy today in Manhattan, and oftentimes when we go out, we talk to people, and they, we have to remind them that Andrew and I, the people that we work with, we're public servants, and we want to keep people safe, and we want to do right by the community, and we want to make our city better. I'm a resident of Queens. I grew up in Queens. Andrew grew up in Queens, and nothing, we are the advocates for the community. We are the advocates for Queens, and that's what we want. So the main thing is bringing down those KSI. It's not just the killed, it's the people who have severe injuries that they need to go to the hospital for, that are life-changing injuries. And that's something that's incredibly important to us. We need to reduce those numbers. And the good news is, over the last 4+ years, New York City has seen fatalities and KSI go down each of the last 5 years. Okay, now this year we're, unfortunately, we've certainly had a little bit of a blip on that, but we are heading in the right direction. And the other important thing to note is that New York City, killed and severely injured, has gone down. Nationwide, across the United States of America, it has gone up. So if you talk about any other city in the United States, any other state, the number of people dying on the streets, on highways, is actually going up. So we're bucking that national trend. We're heading in the right direction, and it's part and parcel because of the 3 E's of Vision Zero. It's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. It's a work in progress, just like New York City is a work in progress. I think we could all agree to that. We're all trying to do the best we can every day. But the 3 E's of Vision Zero: enforcement, our colleagues in the police department, enforcing the rules of the road, incredibly important. 2, engineering. How can DOT best design our streets so that people make good decisions? That's ultimately what it's all about. Pedestrians make good decisions, cyclists make good decisions, motorists make good decisions. You don't want to ever create an intersection, and we know they're out there, and we're trying to pick them off month by month, year by year. An intersection where it's confusing to people. Where do I go? What do I do? What movement do I make? Now, some of our locations are more challenging than others. I'll freely admit that. But we want to make sure that people make good decisions on the road, because it's the public realm. It's when we're all out there as a community, publicly together. It's important for that reason. And the last E of the 3 E's is education. And we work very closely with the NYPD, TLC, the Taxi and Limousine Commission, and our own at DOT Safety Education Division to work with senior centers, schools, civic organizations, you name it, and provide safety material just like this, just like what we handed out tonight. And I'd like to invite anyone here who's with a civic organization or knows a senior center or knows a school where, you know what, that would be great if we could have safety educators partner with that school or that senior center and really try to make a dent in what could be a dangerous situation. That's what we're here for. So the simple things like giving out pamphlets, reminding people what the rules of the road are. We also have a group called Street Ambassadors. Our street ambassadors go out to 2 locations problematic locations, and they talk to people. They talk to motorists, they talk to cyclists, they talk to pedestrians that are going up and down the corridor, and they ask them, what are the issues that you're seeing? What are the problems that you encounter every day of your life? And that's how we start to generate projects, and that's when we start opening up our design toolkit, saying, what can we do here? Because when it comes to making our streets safer, there's not a one-size-fits-all answer. It's not just throw up a sign and everyone will listen. What I've learned is you throw up a speed limit sign, it does not slow people down. It doesn't. You know, and that's an unfortunate thing. You wish that people would follow it, but I think we can all agree that sometimes you can tell people stuff until you're blue in the face and they're not going to listen unless there's some type of penalty. In which case, that's where enforcement really comes and is important. So with that being said, I know there's a program tonight. We're happy to be here. We're happy to listen. We're happy to work with the community. That's what we do every day, and we're not going to stop until we get to the point where everybody really feels safe on the street. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
You said something about curbs. Are you fixing curbs?
So yes.
And if they need
What's the
fixing,
Florence, we can't-
Florence, we cannot hear you.
I'll repeat the question. The question was curbs. Curbs. You know, so the answer is yes, the city does fix curbs. The mechanism that the city has to fix curbs is in what we call our prior notice sidewalk contracts. So that just means that the people who have sidewalk violations receive prior notice that we are going to be fixing their sidewalk. And when we fix the sidewalk, we also fix their curb at no charge to the property owner. So if you have a sidewalk violation, it can be kind of scary. People see it and they think, oh my goodness, I'm going to get a fine. There's no fine. It's just the city putting you on notice that there's a defect in the sidewalk, there's a trip hazard, something dangerous that people were walking, and it's city administrative code. Every property owner is responsible for their sidewalk.
All right, there'll be
Not the curb,
questions at the
not
end
the
of the
curb.
presentation, please,
Yes.
at the
Not the
end of
curb.
it.
Yeah.
Alan, I think you're next.
Okay. So the city will fix the sidewalk unless there's tree damage. If the city tree damaged it, then you're not charged for that. They will fix your sidewalk, charge you for what you're responsible for, but fix the curb at no cost. That's the
Just one
mechanism.
other question. What's the criteria for a left turn signal?
So the criteria for a left turn signal. So there's several things that we have to look at for a left turn signal. One is a left turn bay. Is there enough room on the street for a left turn bay where people could wait? Because otherwise, people are going to be honking their horn, waiting for, I want to make a left turn. And I'm going to. You can just imagine the scenarios. So a left turn bay is necessary, and two, it's done. Our signal engineers look at nationally recognized guidelines for all signal studies, including left turn signal studies, and it's about volumes of traffic. That's it. So if the volumes of traffic are high enough, then it will trigger.
Thank you. Alan, you want to take over now? And then the questions come from the audience.
Excuse me.
There's a program, remember?
I know, but I made a little change, so just relax. You got a question, Mark?
Yeah, quick question. Potholes. The address is 7226 Main Street Bagels, a block away from here. There are 3 potholes there. I called it into the community board and the response came back, done. It's still there. I called it in again and it's still there, not done. It's right there in the service.
Address one more
72-26 Main Street,
Got it.
Main Street Bagels.
in the service road. We'll get it done in the service road.
On the service road. It's obvious you can see because there's a break in the island that goes into the main road. So if you can't see, I'm legally blind and I can see.
Got it. Got it. We'll get it.
Okay.
One more
I'm
question.
looking for it to be
Yes,
fixed.
in reference to the sidewalk problem, what if the sidewalk is just fine, if the curb is non-existent or
sidewalk is just fine and there's no issues, it gets added to our curb database, and the city will address it when there is a dedicated curb contract. So I think one important thing to note is, we just discussed 6,000 plus miles of roadway in New York City. We don't have the resources to go and fix every inch of curb. It's a lot. So our locations are bundled together into larger contracts, and the contractors go and address locations that we have become aware of over time.
Yes, 311.
What I will say is this, and last point, if you do report a curb condition, what's going to happen is DOT will send out an inspector and they're going to look at the sidewalk too. Okay, so it's not, don't be surprised then if they find a sidewalk defect and issue a violation. All right, just want to be clear on that.
I want to thank you so much for coming and informing us. Very information. Very good.
Thank you.
Now I want to introduce Alan Sherman,
Give her the mic.
The advocate of the Queens Community Council, who's been working on the bicycle issue in New York City, and we asked him to speak on it, and then he'll show a video on it. Al, it's all yours.
Thank you. Bicycle lanes are taking over our neighborhoods. There are very few people using these lanes. Tonight we invited alternative transportation to join us up here. They're a bicycle advocate group. They informed us, and we were very nice to them, that they're not coming. They see no need to discuss the issue. This is what's going to happen. They expect to basically do away with cars eventually. Now, over the years, I've spoken with many people at DOT at various meetings, and I said, who advocates for motorists? I even asked the city, the City Council Transportation Committee. No one advocates at any meeting for motorists, but the bicyclists are there. So that's why they're getting everything they want, and we, the motorists, are being penalized. They raise the parking meters and lower the times per quarter. We have this silly congestion pricing coming in. They raise tolls. Anything you can think of to get money out of motorists, they are doing, and there's no one there to defend for us. We as motorists must realize that we control the city. We vote, and we should contact all the elected officials and tell them if they don't stick up for motorists, we will vote them out of office. Period, no matter who they are. We must have a say in what is going on at DOT and on the roads. Now, like I said, I spoke to many people on different levels in the DOT, spoken to the bicycle groups, no respect for motorists. And I'm frankly tired of it. I mean, it's like I do not understand why we have to be penalized. Bicyclists, like motorists, if they want the roads, they must be licensed, registered, and prove that they know the laws. Most of them blow red lights. On one of the videos I'm showing, it shows a bicyclist running by a stop sign on a school bus and hitting a child. Nothing happens. There's also a video about a woman who was killed by a bicyclist. Nothing happens, they don't have insurance. If that was a motorist, God forbid, all heck breaks loose. Motorist gets thrown in jail, this and that. Bicyclists must be treated equally. And right now the DOT and the NYPD are not doing that. I drive down 73rd Avenue basically every morning, going out towards Fresh Meadows and Oakcrest. They just run the red lights, and I've never seen a policeman there stopping these bicycles. I mean, it's like someone's gonna get killed and it's gonna be blamed on the motorists. It's not our fault. The bicyclists don't obey the rules. So I'd love to tell the DOT to stop building these bike lanes until these bicyclists are licensed, insured, and registered, and know the rules of the road. They must be wearing helmets. They cannot have earphones on. They can't be on their phones. And just like the motorists, if they want equal use of the roads, they got to be treated equally. And right now, that is not happening. They think they own the streets, and this has to come to a stop. Furthermore, I have some statistics here that I was given by the 107th precinct. From the 12 months from June 2018 to May 2019, bicycle-involved accidents within bike lanes was 623 collisions, whereas vehicles only, there were only 480 collisions in the bike lanes. Okay? Bicyclists are a hazard to our streets, the way they have it set up. They will not listen to us. They don't work with the communities to stop the bike lanes. Mayor de Blasio even overruled a community board, I think it was in Sunnyside, who voted down all bike lanes, but he said, no, they're coming. So I was like, what do we do other than vote these people out? And I just hope the DOT, these nice gentlemen, go back to the DOT and basically go, oh, this guy was right. We gotta do something about these wild bikers. We didn't even think of it when we put in bike lanes. We just think line it up. People use the bike lanes. No, it needs to be educated. And one last issue, we get ticketed for running red lights through the camera system, which is basically almost illegal because they're supposed to have warning signs up telling us the cameras are coming. That's New York State law. And they don't do that. They don't put these warning signs up, but the cameras are there. These bicyclists should either be wearing vests with the license plate on the back of the vest or some other kind of identification, so when they run red lights, they too can be photographed and receive summonses in the mail, just like we do. They're no different. So those are my views. I hope these gentlemen will go back and say, you know, that was a smart guy. He knows what he's talking about. We've got to help the motorists. It's enough of these bike lanes until the motorists take care of.
Yes, you know, your comments are like a breath of fresh air. I must tell you that this is, there is no one representing motorists, and bicyclists are running the road. They do not have any regulation. They don't have any responsibility for their behavior. We, as motorists, are required to have licenses, have insurance, and bicyclists are not required to do that. I don't believe that they are. I don't believe they are. And if they do violate those rules that they are supposed to follow, they do not get any penalty. If you hit a bicyclist, it's your fault.
The penalty is they get more bike lanes.
Yes, that's the
But
penalty.
it's not only the bikes, it's also the men who deliver.
The e-bikes, the e-scooters, all that needs to be regulated better, and the laws have to be enforced. Otherwise, lay off the motorists. Treat us like the bicycles.
What do you think, Theo?
Should I respond?
Yeah, what's happening?
Mr. Sherman, may I have 2 minutes to read my comments? Okay. According to Hunter College study, 24% of Manhattan bikers blow stop signs, and I know that in the outer boroughs, the rate is higher because the traffic is lighter and it's less dangerous. In my own neighborhood north of Casino Park, both cars and bicycles blow the stop signs regularly, and this is compounded by children on bikes who don't understand the rules of the road, and they have no sense of their own mortality. Now, thanks to a bill introduced by Neely Rose, New York State has approved the use of motorized e-bikes and e-scooters. Yes, I believe in sharing the road, but it's time to add reality to the pot. I drive a 5,000-pound Ford Explorer. I seldom go faster than 20 on local streets, but the biker who blows the stop sign or light has no chance when his unhelmeted head hits the ground after he runs into my car, which is legally crossing the intersection. If the biker is injured due to his negligence, if he damages my car, or if I swerve to avoid the biker and hit another car, my insurance is responsible even though the biker is the proximate cause. And meanwhile, the biker ignores traffic laws with relative impunity, and that's not fair. It's not fair when an adult biker feels that the rules don't apply to him, and it's really unfair when parents make the rest of the world responsible for their child's reflectors. And we must hold parents liable if their children causes an accident by ignoring traffic laws. We enforce license, insurance, running lights, and helmets for motorcycles because they share the road with cars. It's not unreasonable, therefore, to extend the same requirements to bikes, both manual and motorized. And for those who don't want a license and insure, they always have the option of walking their bike to the local park to use the bike lanes in the local park. Finally, I urge the banning of all public roads of motorized skates, motorized skateboards, unicycles, and these new two-wheeled electric balancing scooters that look like hoverboards. They have no effective steering device, no handlebars for balance, and no safety. You have a copy? I do.
Okay, so what I would say is that what I hear is something that we all share, and that's a concern for the safety of everyone on the roadway. And I think that's the starting point where we all have to begin at. We all want to be safe on the roadway. And
Mr. Silvestri, I don't want to live with the idea that even though this 6-year-old on his bicycle blew the stop sign and hit my car and got killed, I don't want to have to live with that. It wasn't my fault, but I will be the one who has to bear the responsibility for his death, and
Right.
that's not right.
what I can say is no one wants to live with that. And part of what we do at DOT is a complete street approach, which is we are looking to create streets and build our streets in such a way that there is predictable, dedicated space for all users. Okay? Sidewalk, that is the space, the predictable space for pedestrians. The crosswalk, predictable space for a pedestrian. Cyclist, a predictable space for them is within the bike lane. Motorists, a predictable space for them, travel lanes, clearly the travel lanes, and within the parking lanes of roadways. When it comes to, who advocates for motorists, what I can say is this: there is no advocacy for one specific type of mode, no matter what it looks like to people. We advocate for all users. We advocate for pedestrians. We advocate certainly for drivers. Certainly Andrew and I know if we take away one parking spot in Queens, we're going to be hearing about it till the end of time. So we advocate greatly for that. And guess what? In many cases, there is a traffic calming component to having parking. So what we've looked at in Queens, in the way we've developed our bicycle network, is what makes sense in certain locations. All right? In certain locations, the roadway, the traveling roadway, is too narrow for 2 lanes of vehicular traffic. But there's a little room left over where we can simply mark a white stripe on the roadway, a white stripe, one single white stripe, that says this is a dedicated space for cyclists. Dedicated, predictable, drivers get used to it. And what we've seen across the city over time is that when there is a predictable, dedicated space, not only do you have the traffic calming element, people tend to slow their speeds. Amazingly, when you narrow the visual path, I always use the example, you ever drive on the Jackie Robinson Parkway under Queens Boulevard? What do you do when you go through that narrow pinch point? You speed up, you slow down, right? When you narrow the roadway, you automatically slow down. And even when you visually narrow the roadway, you reduce your speed. So when we give that dedicated space and make it predictable, we don't touch, in that case, don't touch parking. You're actually creating a safer environment for all road users. And that's what I'll end with, because I know we could probably talk forever. But, you know, Mr. Sherman brings up some great points. People, cyclists, oftentimes do not obey the rules of the road. And what do we do there? It goes back to enforcement, education. We need to keep on hammering home these points. Educate all the road users, enforce people who break the law. When it comes to, you mentioned there should be warning signs for red light cameras. It's always illegal to run a red light. It doesn't matter who you are, it is illegal to run a red light. You do not need a warning sign by New York State law. It's not true. Okay? It's illegal. We should not have to have a sign on a bank that says do not rob. We know it's illegal to rob the bank, right? It's illegal to run a red light. You can't do it. So, you know, I'm just gonna say that cyclist behavior, what we've seen is, you cited that Hunter study. I'm glad you brought that up. Because that Hunter study also says that when you create cyclist infrastructure, when you have a dedicated, predictable place, cyclist infractions go down. They go way down. So if we're living in a world where bicycles exist, people use them not just for entertainment and for exercise. People use it to get to the train. They use it to get to school. They use it to get to work. People use it as a transportation mode in this city, and that's not going away. It's just not. So we have to do our best to balance all the needs, of all the multiple users, and to make everyone as safe as possible. How do we do that? Make it predictable, make it obvious, design our streets so that people make good decisions. So I'm glad you brought up that Hunter study, because that's exactly what it said. You're right, people shouldn't be running red lights, cyclists or vehicle. But when you're a 5,000-pound Ford Explorer, you can do a lot more damage than an 80-pound bike. Okay? So I think you bring up some great points. Thank you.
I just have two more points, and then I have two videos I want to show. First of all, if you go to the Facebook page of the Transportation Alternative of Queens, their mission statement is, Transportation Alternative's mission is to reclaim New York City streets from the automobile, and to advocate for bicycling, walking, and public transit as the best transportation alternatives. Nowhere in here do they say they want to live with cars, to work with us. They want to do away with us. Whenever I spoke with them, they are extremely anti-motorists. And that's not good at the negotiating table. And the DOT should be telling these organizations, motorists are, what you told us about bicycles, you should be telling them about motorists.
We do.
Well, then why don't they listen? I mean, it's like they should not. They sit in at the meetings, but we don't. When was the last time AAA was at a DOT meeting to sit down and discuss bike lanes and road conditions and everything? Yes.
That's AAA. I think.
This is Tasha. You said that somebody passes a red light, which means, well, how do we know when the bicyclist passes a red light? How do you ticket them? If he comes up on the camera, they have no license plate, they don't have a number on their back, they don't have insurance. I mean, how do you ticket them?
So I mean, it's a fair point, you know, but
It's important to note that red light cameras are something that's utilized at our most crash-prone locations. Not every traffic signal has a red light camera. It only happens at the places where it is most dangerous. So that being said, for those locations that are most dangerous, you know, if the vehicles are going to cause the most damage there. And I would say this, you know, we're the Department of Transportation. We advocate for all of New Yorkers. We're trying, like I said, we're not one specific group. I don't have favorites. You know, I actually like your meetings better because you have, you know, coffee, hot coffee. That's a nice. It's better than most meetings. But at the end of the day, we have to advocate for everybody. We have to make sure everyone is safe. And who advocates for motorists? The city of New York spends more money paving streets, doing lane markings for vehicles, putting in traffic signals for vehicles, regulating the curb space with stop signs, curb
The
reg-
motorists pay for through their taxes
Right,
and fees.
right. And so do people who choose not to drive with their taxes, their sales, you know, their property tax, sales tax.
We don't
you
have a
name it.
choice.
Gasoline tax,
They-
registration tax,
right.
We have
license
to
tax.
So what I'm saying is if you live in New York, you pay for all of the bevy of goods that the city's.
So what you find the question, you're talking like a politician, you're not
Yeah.
talking like a man who has answers that make any
Right.
sense.
So how
So cyclists they would not be ticketed by a red light camera. They would have to be enforced by a police officer, the good old fashioned way.
How that is ridiculous.
They're all
because you
ways-
know they cannot make an arrest unless they've seen the incident.
They're
In the
all-
same way with the vehicle, Beverly. It's the same way with the vehicle.
Yeah, and I'm saying that I've never seen anybody go after a bicyclist ever. I've never even heard of such a thing. Can you state one case that you know of specifically where the bicyclist drove away
So,
and causing an accident, went to
What
a
I can
red
tell
light?
you is, and I appreciate your concern. I know it's coming out of a place where you're concerned for safety.
Have you ever been hit by a car?
I've been hit by a car.
Twice. One
understand.
ran the red light and the other said F you and he just went
So you got
over.
hit by a car.
Twice. Not
Right.
in a car, not as a bicyclist, but
I
it's the same
understand.
impact. I worked at an ambulance for 10 years. The impact of being
Right.
hit by a car is no joke, even if you were only thrown a few.
Totally agree with you. What I can tell you is that Andrew and I in our office, we attend traffic stat every month, patrol borough north and south for the NYPD, and we go through their enforcement numbers. We go through each and every moving violations, non-moving violation with all of the precincts in Queens. And what I can tell you is they absolutely 100% spend a lot of time enforcing cyclist infractions. 100%. Every precinct in Queens does it. And just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Yes, that's right.
Okay? It does happen.
No, it doesn't.
It does happen
I don't
because I
think
see the
one
numbers.
word you're saying is all political.
Okay, let's watch the videos.
Let's watch the video. Let's watch the
Julia,
video.
Julia, come take the microphone for the speakers. There's two videos I'm going to show you to back us up.
Hello?
The first video has no sound. This is a school bus pulling up to drop children off. They usually go across the street to prevent cars from driving by and they put up the stop sign. Kids get off, they're about to cross the street, and boom. A bicyclist did not obey the law and hit a child.
Okay, and this was in Brooklyn, no, not.
This was in Brooklyn. I think it was last year. Thank God that child wasn't seriously hurt, but if he was, who would take care of it? The bicyclist has no insurance. Where is the police giving him a ticket for running the red light? I mean, a stop sign.
Okay, video 2, let's see this, this is the fun.
The video 2 has sound.
Video 2 has sound, video not.
If you walk around town and you've had a close encounter with a bicyclist, you know it can be dangerous. There's some out there who are a little bit too fast, and sadly now we're learning about funeral services scheduled for Jill Tarlow. She was the woman hit by a cyclist in Central Park last week, and she died from her injuries.
Major story in today's paper that we still see a lot of bikers going through red lights. Not necessarily the people you see here in these pictures. It looks like they're going slow and obeying the rules, but it is happening. Bikers tend to not, at least the ones profiled today, stop at those red lights. Let's go to Teresa Priolo. She's on the Upper East Side. Where specifically there, Teresa?
Good morning.
Morning, Greg Royce and Alan, 68th and Lex. And let me tell you, based on the traffic that we're seeing here this morning, bicycle might be the only way to get around. They are the only people that are really moving at any great speed. Although what's interesting is, despite all the traffic, we're seeing a lot of cyclists going in the wrong direction. We just saw a guy come west on 68th Street and then cut across Lex to head downtown. He's going the wrong way. We've seen a lot of that this morning. So it just goes to show that over the last couple of days, really last week, we have been talking about cyclists being a huge problem in Central Park, where they're competing for space with not only the cars, but also pedestrians. And what we're finding is it's not just Central Park. It's on our main streets, main avenues as well. In fact, the New York Post did an informal survey, and they found that out of the 1,000 bicyclists that they saw going by, 80% of the time, the cyclists blew through red lights. That was the number one thing that they saw. Not only were they blowing through red lights, though, they were failing to yield to pedestrians, and they weren't following a lot of the other posted signs as well, let alone not even going the speed limit. This is a huge problem here in the city, and we are paying attention to it because of what happened last week. On Thursday, a Fairfield, Connecticut woman by the name of Jill Tarloff was killed by 31-year-old James Marshall. He was, by all accounts, flying through the park. He hit her, and she was seriously injured. She was put on life support and died on Monday. We talked to some people here on the Upper East Side, on 68th and Lex, about the cyclists that are flying by. Here's what they had to say about it.
I don't even bike down Lex. I only use the avenues that have bike lanes to actually avoid that situation entirely. Because I think it's kind of dangerous biking around next to these cars.
Bicyclists, a lot of times they don't pay attention to lights and things like that. And so you have to be on your guard a lot.
They need to be anxious because maybe who knows what can happen. A car is a big deal, but it's also a bicycle. That's what people don't realize. But you can be hit by a bicycle too and be hurt too.
Now, we have been reporting that the NYPD is in the midst of a crackdown in Central Park, looking for cyclists not following the rules of the road. No word from them, though, if in fact that crackdown extends to some of our other streets and avenues outside of the park and around the city. Interesting, though, Greg Rorzano, we heard from at least one cyclist this morning that they won't take a street like Lex because there is no bike lane. They just don't feel as though it's safe. Back to both of you in the studio.
Teresa, thank you very much. Greg,
This event had happened a few years ago, but it's still in effect today. Bicyclists are blowing red lights. I do believe that Hunter College survey or report is understating the issue.
You should not have to wait until it's an epidemic to the point that the NYPD has to crack down. You should be cracking down from the start.
Right, stop building bike lanes until we know bicyclists know the rules of the road and follow the rules.
Yeah.
Just like motorists. You're not going to put a motorist in their car unless they're licensed and go through training, everything else involved. Bicycles should be treated the same.
I have a comment. One of the things you emphasized was enforcement, and I don't think there is a sufficient amount of enforcement. In fact, there is another problem that you did not mention. You mentioned dedicated lanes, but there are not dedicated lanes for bicyclists in every street. For example, Cooper Avenue has bicycle decals in the same lane as motorists. And there are many streets in the city like that. How do you explain that?
I can explain it simply. It's a treatment we call sharrows, shared lanes.
Well, how does that work?
It works as, it's supposed to notify a motorist, and it's taught via driver's ed now, and it's part of the DMV curriculum, that when you see a sharrow, it means that it's a shared lane, that it reminds motorists that this is a connecting route for bicycle lanes, and that you should
So the bicycles can be in the same lane as the motorists?
That's correct, and that stands for any street.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
You mentioned driver's education. Where's the bicyclist education? How are they supposed to know what those lane markers mean? No one teaches them.
So as I've mentioned before, DOT has a very strong education component with Vision Zero, where we do a tremendous amount of outreach to different communities, including including cyclist education, rules of the road. We do every single bike map and Bike Smart is updated every year, and it is shared at every single bike shop, every single event that you could possibly think of in New York City. This literature is shared, and in addition to that, it's being there in person and talking to people. That's the Street Ambassador program that I've talked about. This is something that is going to take time. It is, okay? People need to become more adjusted. All different types of users of the roadway need to realize that we're a city that is approaching 9 million. 9 million people, and that's a tremendous amount, and we need multiple modes of transportation where everyone can be safe.
But then if you really care about the safety of the bicyclists, you would not let them on the roads unless they knew the laws in the road. Does the DOT go into the public schools to work with the children and teach them the laws?
Yes.
Not to put a damper on it, but there has to be joint respect in answer to your question. In 1977, I worked in Forest Hills. I am visually impaired, and I got back and forth from Kew Garden Hills over the Jewel Avenue Bridge in the curb lane with the body of my bike in the center nose of the car. There were no bike lanes in '77, and they were forced to respect me as well and go into the center lane. Otherwise, I'd be up on the curb. So there has to be a joint. I would never fight Alan. I'm just saying, it's respect in all directions. If I see traffic, if I would have seen traffic was too heavy, I would pull over to the side and wait a while. But I went from Forest Hills, 2.5 miles, back and forth every day. And I'm visually impaired. So everybody's got to have respect.
I think that's a great point, and something that something that we see every day is people telling us their stories of what they encountered on the roadway. Okay, the egregious behavior that we see, and we see some really bad behavior from all different types of pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, and we need to do the best we can every day with education and enforcement, okay, to make this better. And when it comes to, frankly, with shared lanes, sometimes it's the best we can do because you can't fit a dedicated space on a street without making major changes to the street. So it's the best we can do to remind people, be careful.
I have two things. One is on snowy conditions. How is anybody going to ride their bicycle in snowy conditions around these streets? We know that they do the best they can to clear the streets for the cars, but it's not a good condition. And if we are going to say the city of the future holds no cars and everybody's going to go, and then what about people who have we're all over 50 in this room. The generation that has to suffer the most are those who cannot bicycle to work or cannot bicycle to their doctor or to visit their son or their daughter or go grocery shopping. They need a car. And for them to have the nerve to say that this is going to be a bicycle community is absurd. It's selfish and it's absurd.
So I would say, look, anyone's allowed to say whatever they want. I think it's fair to say as a representative of the city, no one expects there to be no cars in New York City. That is ludicrous. Okay, the point is that 100% of our road space is dedicated to cars. 100% of it. Every single inch is dedicated to cars.
We need it.
Right, but
We need it. It isn't like this is something that we, by the way, motorists who are parked at the curb legally, and you have a bike lane that runs parallel to that curb lane. I have actually seen accidents where bicyclists have run into people who are trying to get in or get out of their car, or women who are busy trying to futz around with their car seat and all that business. No warning, you're either going to get out of the way or you're going to get it. Now, in those cases, the bicyclist who gets as badly injured as the person coming in.
that's right. What you're referring to is something that is referred to as dooring,
Yes.
where someone opens up their car door
Right.
And that's why when bicycle lanes are designed, there needs to be a bit of a buffer space so that a driver can open up their car door and there be enough buffer space so that a cyclist in a bike lane does not suffer a tragedy. There was a recent one, well, several recent on the Union Turnpike. And it's a great tragedy. And that's why if you ask the cyclist, what would you like to be riding on? What would you like to be riding on? They're not going to say a sharrow. They're not going to say that. They're not going to say a traditional bike lane. They're going to say a protected bike lane. And what is a protected bike lane? Typically what we do in the city is you move the parking lane over, and now you have the pedestrians on the sidewalk. You have a bike lane along the curb line where the parking lane was, and the parking lane just gets moved out. So now the parking lane protects the cyclist and the pedestrians. So that's something that's a complete street that actually protects.
On the side, walk right into the lane of traffic, or if you have a business wall next to it.
I'm happy to talk with you after. I'm sure there are other people waiting.
I'm sure they don't have these problems as well.
There's one politician here in New York City who's actually going to be running for mayor in 21. Cory Johnson, our Speaker of the Council, proposes to have over 50 miles a year and up to 250 miles of protected bike lanes within 5 years. He is running on a platform and he said, I want to completely revolutionize how we share our street space. And that's what this bill that he's proposing does. This is a roadmap to breaking the car culture in a thoughtful, comprehensive way. He is anti-car. Now, I spoke with him in person once. I brought this up to him. He said, that's not my problem, that's a local problem. And he turned and walked the other way. Cory Johnson wants to do away with motor vehicles. And it's here in writing. So I don't believe that some of these far-left politicians, I'm a Democrat, but I'm not far-left, want to do away with motor vehicles. They want to sit around singing Kumbaya,
Exactly.
and everybody love each other, and ride your bike to work and get there all sweaty, and not take a shower. So the mentality is there to do away with cars. And if we elect people like Cory Johnson, we're going to lose the right to drive in the city eventually.
I have a question. When I go to Long Island City, on, I think it's 47th Street, bicycle ride, take a mic. Okay, in Long Island City, on 47th Street. Okay.
Hello?
Okay.
There is a bike lane going from west to east, going towards Jamaica. But there is none on the other side. Are both bicyclists allowed in that one lane going and coming? Is that allowed?
So cyclists have to follow the rules of the road. If it's a one-way street,
Right.
they have to go in the direction of traffic. Now, there are locations where the signage and the markings both dictate that it's a two-way bike lane. Those are oftentimes separated from traffic by either a parking lane or some concrete. So in some cases, there are two-way bike lanes, but in all other cases, cyclists have to move with the direction of traffic.
Okay. Only because I see the silhouette of the cyclist going one way.
It's like that on Burning Street as well. Burning Street.
So I want to ask a question. So the bottom line here from this whole conversation is there needs to be legislation. There needs to be legislation that bicyclists have to take a test, a written test, just like a motorist, that bicyclists have to have insurance, medical insurance, and they have to have and a registration, just like a car. And I think that sounds very simple, and it shouldn't even be an argument. Because anything that rides on the road that can kill another person needs to have legislation to teach them that they cannot do the things they're doing. So
legislation?
That would necessitate legislation, yes.
Okay, yes.
Right.
So let's go through. Anybody else?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you stated that that obviously there's a big difference between a bicycle and a car in terms of weight, right? We know that. But the bike, first of all, can injure or kill a pedestrian, and maybe even more importantly, or just as important, when a bicycle goes haywire, it causes cars to swerve and cause accidents. So there's no question that bicyclists can cause major injury and death. So what we're talking about is the plates and insurance. If cars didn't have plates and cars didn't have insurance, obviously the traffic situation would be a lot different than it is.
Well, I think what I've been saying is that if there is a predictable space,
There is a predictable space, and there is dedicated space where all road users expect different modes of transportation. What we've seen is speeding goes down, crashes go down, injuries go down.
Okay.
So we've seen that these methods have been tried and true. In the cases that you have discussed, absolutely, some egregious behavior, things that need enforcement. But the vast majority of incidents are, you can't compare the number of KSI, killed or severely injured.
Right.
It's beyond apples and oranges. I mean, every single day I get an emergency response email for every single crash that kills or injures someone in New York City. And every single day there's multiple people killed by a motor vehicle. Of course it has happened with cyclists, but we're talking 1 or 2 a year versus hundreds. So there's
1 or 2 a year?
There's a difference there's a weighted difference there. And I think that's something that we have to understand, that when we design our streets so that everyone is safe and everyone is making good decisions, everyone gets safer.
Right.
Cyclists, pedestrians, and motorists.
Are you saying that injured people by bicyclists is 1 or 2 a year?
Yes.
No, that's impossible.
No, I'm sorry. Fatalities.
Fatalities. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
Even that.
Correct. There was one. People. The question I think was stemming from injuries and fatalities that were caused by cyclists.
Yes.
And I think that in fatalities we're talking about 1 or 2, and in some cases we've had 0 per year.
Okay.
So injuries is another story, but it is still markedly lower than comparison.
But that does not excuse.
Of course it doesn't excuse.
So when is the DOT going to figure out a way of teaching the bicyclists the rules of the road? I mean, hard time, like, get the DMV, that you have to bring your bike to the DMV, get it inspected, pay for your license, pay for your registration, prove you know the rules of the road.
And have insurance.
You have insurance. It means like they need to be treated like any other moving vehicle.
This gentleman has a question.
Alan, we went over that a few times. Your message is clear. One of the aspects of bicycle lanes which we haven't discussed is what it does to the small business. It's taken away parking. I give you an example, like on Queens Boulevard, it's put small businesses out of business. One example is Ben Best Deli, and there are many others that went out of business. These bicycle lanes have put companies out of business. They've taken away parking spots. They've slowed the flow of commerce, which is the bloodline to our tax dollars. Truckers, people have to deliver. It takes 30, 40% more time to get to where they have to go, which means they got to work overtime, which raises the cost of products, and eventually we pay for it in the long run. So no one's thinking about commerce. No one's thinking about the small businessman, and it's just killing commerce for the few bikers I see on Queens Boulevard. Very rarely do I see bikers at any time of the day. So it doesn't make sense in Queens. It makes a lot of sense in Manhattan. I see bikers everywhere. It's hard to Queens makes sense here, but in Queens, I don't see it. That doesn't make any sense. And oh no, one last thing. Everybody I talk to, they are frustrated. The commuters in Queens are frustrated. It takes them so long to get to where they want to go. They stay home and they shop on the computer instead.
How many injuries are there by bicyclists a year?
I don't have the statistics in front of me, but what I do know is that it's far lower than.
Would you imagine it's in the hundreds?
I don't want to speculate.
Huh?
I don't want to speculate.
Okay. If it were in the hundreds, do you think more regulation would be warranted?
It's hard to say.
Okay.
Back to the business owners, have you ever tried to imagine what it'd be like trying to deliver to a store who has no parking in front of it? How many blocks away do you have to go and possibly even double park on the street where you wouldn't want to in order to deliver your products or whatever capacity to deliver? How are they supposed to do it? So what you're saying is all private businesses that have any kind of bike lanes, go screw yourself. That's what you're saying. If there is no consideration given at all, and those, I feel sorry for those drivers, if getting your deliveries done, you're given a certain number of deliveries, a certain amount of time, doing them on time, doing them appropriately, doing them safely, and then being told, no, you have to go a couple blocks down before you can actually park and use the store. That is
Your questions have been
Hello? Your questions have been wonderful, and I think what we need to do is talk to our legislators and convince them that this is very necessary. Okay, so it's going to be up to the Queens Community Council to speak to Neely Rossi, because somebody said she has a bill in, and I would like to see that bill and what it says. Okay, in terms of, I don't know what it's all about. It's the first time I'm hearing that she has a bill in about bicycles.
I am hearing you.
Somebody mentioned it.
Yeah.
Because I wrote it down. So we need to approach her, make an appointment with her, and sit down seriously and speak to her. That this is a very serious situation. It's not only just a bike, it's the motorbikes that I see as well. And there are a lot of those on the road.
Just like the same parking, they zip through the parking and out and use that as a shortcut to get from one side of Flushing to the other without using the streets. And they're in there where there's children and elderly people and people with dogs on leashes, and they're zipping through cars to parking is not doing that. You're a joke.
Okay, we take this very seriously, and we will be moving on it. And it's like 28 to 9, and I think it's time to say good night and thank you.
I need dues. We're 6 months already into this.
Oh, we need dues, we need money.